Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Let's Talk ESO with me, Sherman. So I wanted to get this video out before the Dragon Bones DLC dropped, and actually I've been working on it for about a week, but unfortunately I'm still going to release the video even though Dots Gaming did a video similar to this. But I do want to give a shout out to him for that was a great video. It's amazingly well done and well explained. Great video. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, guys. And I will be referencing what some of the things he said along with another YouTuber. So I just want to kind of clarify that. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. The first things we're going to be talking about is, or the things we're going to be talking about is build variety, optimization, and organization. These are, to me, three very key factors that come into the game. Like, if I play a game and it doesn't offer me a lot of build options, I know it's going to be very bland, and it's not going to be very exciting because I'm going to be very limited on my choices and how I can play and all this kind of stuff. Very similar to like Terra. Terra was very bland to me, even though it's a great game with good action combat, that kind of thing. It's very bland because it doesn't give you a lot of variety in builds. You're very limited. You just have your class choices. You do get some race choices, but your race doesn't really matter, you know, kind of thing. But it does because certain races can play certain classes. So, but in ESO, the cool thing is that we do have a lot of build variety. But a lot of people don't understand what a lot of us mean when we say there's a lot of build variety. See, a lot of people think that when we say, oh, there's a lot of build variety, we're talking about just in-game. Sometimes we are. Sometimes we're talking about PvP. Sometimes we're talking about PvE overland. Sometimes we're talking about a lot of different things. And it can come down to that, or it can come down to the choices of, like, this. So, there's viability, which is more down at, like, base floor, you know. You have viability. Viability means able to complete. And then you have optimal, or suboptimal, which means it's better and easy, and it can take you a lot further. Then you have optimal, which can take you even further. And then you have like epic optimal or super optimal or whatever you want to call it, which is where right now where the meta's at. The meta is like the most superb optimal setup you can have. Being viable just means that you can complete content. And anything, any build just about, can be viable to complete content. It's not going to be the best build ever, but it's going to be good enough to get the content done. And that's what a lot of people are looking for, is just something that's viable. They don't care how optimal it is or how perfect it is. They just want it to be good enough to get the content done and fun enough to play. And that's where a lot of people get this misinterpretation of when we do say there's a lot of viable options, they think we're talking optimal options. Where they think we're talking like leaderboard competitive options. We're not even getting to that point yet. Okay, we're not even scratching the surface of those things. We're getting close, but we're talking about just being optimal enough or viable enough to play the content and complete it. You don't have to have CP 690 to be viable. You can be viable at CP 160 for all content, including trials. Heck, I ran my first trial when I was CP 160. Actually, I was like 164 or 165. Ended up at like 180 when I got done with it. It was insane. I gained so much CP in there. It was nuts. But it was fun, and I enjoyed it. I liked it because I liked that challenge of playing that content because it was my first trial and we did it on VAT. I loved the challenge that it gave me. But I also was with a very organized group. Alright, before I go any further, I want to explain something. The reason the meta works so good is the builds are optimized. They're not only optimized, but they're also organized to work in a group really well. And if you don't understand how to make an organized meta group, I would suggest going and watching like Hodor or go watch Alcast and watch a lot of his build videos and his videos on running trials, because that's optimized. That guild is optimized. It's organized. They run all optimized builds. They run all organization. These guys are some of the best in the world at running trials and getting like first completions and all that kind of stuff. They're that competitive level in game play. But they aren't the only options. See, those are super optimal builds. You have to be experienced. You have to be skilled. You have to be like have the same gear they're running in order to meet those levels. If you don't have that, you have to start somewhere. And that's where a lot of viable options come in. See, even though you, like when you first start the game and you get to CP 160, when you can get your gear, it's not that your character's inferior. Your character's just not optimized to its full potential yet. You've barely, you've scratched a big surface, but you haven't reached the full potential. You might have learned the basics of the game, but you don't know all the mechanics of every encounter in every dungeon. Even if you played the normal dungeons, you still don't have every dungeon perfectly memorized. And this is to new players, not to the vets. It takes a long time to get to that level that these guys in Hodor and in like Deltia and I could name a lot like Wooler and all them. These guys are experienced players. They have the knowledge of that content down. I'm not perfect. I am nowhere near these guys' level. I'm not. I'm not going to lie. I'm not as good as Alcast. I'm not as good as Gilliam. I'm not as good as Deltia. I'm not as good as Wooler. But their stuff that they offer isn't what I'm looking for. See, there was one thing that Dots made very clear in his video. That is, there's a lot of builds in the game that haven't been found yet. And a lot of those builds are meta viable or meta optimal, but nobody's made them yet because it's very time consuming to test every option in the game. See, what a lot of people don't realize is that there's over 100 skills. No matter what class you pick, you have 100 skill options to choose from. Determining what's going to be the most viable option for your class, and I guess I need to go over classes too. So let me go over classes, we'll get into this other stuff. So, if you guys know, each class in this game is different. They're different by name, they're different by passives, they're different by skills. Now, some classes do have some skills that might be similar in some ways. They might have some passives, some skills, that kind of thing that are similar in some ways, and work in a lot of times the same way. But every class is different into itself. Every class is designed with almost a specialization built into it. Like the Templar is built with healing, and it's one of the best healers in the game. Now, I said one of the best. I didn't say the best. In my opinion, the Nightblade's better. But that's just by opinion. That doesn't mean that it is better. It's just by opinion myself. I like the Nightblade healer better. The Templar's a great healer. It's just not what I like to play. Just like I don't like to play the meta DK tank. Now, one of the things that Dots got at, and he was right, there's a lot of builds because of the difference in classes, the difference in skills, the difference in gear sets, the difference in everything in the game, that nobody's found the right formula for every option. And what I mean by every option, I'm talking every race, class, role, combination. Because just because one race does work better as a class or as a specific role with a specific class doesn't mean other races can't do it. It just means they're not as good. But they can still be optimized to become the most optimal they can at that. And this is where a lot of people don't understand. Is when a lot of people say optimal, They're talking like, they think you're talking like in-game meta optimal. Well, we are. But we're talking about every variation. We're not talking about the specifics that the meta is built around right now. We're talking about every optimal variation. Like, okay, I understand the Khajiit's like the best stam DPS to some people, but I like them as any role. Tanks, healers, DPS, Magicka, stamina, it doesn't matter. And what is the most optimal way to make them a healer? And what class is the best option for them, for healer? Do you see where I'm getting at now? Because every one of them can be a healer for any class. So a Khajiit can be a healer for any class, but which one is going to be the better option for them? What's going to be the best gear setup? What's going to be the best skill setup? What's going to be the best this or that? Because every class is different. They don't use the same skill setup as a Templar does, as a Nightblade does, and so on and so on. This is what a lot of us have been trying to figure out, is like, what's the best options for these different builds? The same thing goes with weapon types. There's people out there who want to tank with two-handed weapons, but nobody's created the two-handed tank meta for every class, for every role. You know, for every class and every race and every combination. This is one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. Like, you can have an optimal version for all this stuff. And because it's that optimal, it is in-game, more than in-game viable. Two-handed tanking can be done. It's just nobody's found the right combination for it to work. And here's why they haven't found the right, optimization is, this whole build thing that I'm talking about, build variety, and I'm talking about like gear, and all, that's the optimization part, is like knowing how to optimize your build with the right stuff. Like, we don't know how to optimize everything. But the other thing that a lot of people forget is, in order for a group to work, you have to organize that group around everyone's build. So if somebody's playing a two-handed tank, your group needs to be able to work with that two-handed tank. If somebody's playing an ice staff tank, the same thing happens. This is the reason why a lot of meta players don't like these other options, is because they're not meta to them. But we don't know what's meta yet for those things yet, because nobody's made it. But people want to play it. See, and there's another big misconception out there about tanks. And it's not a misconception, it's misunderstood. When people say tanks can't do damage, it's not that they can't. They're not DPS. They're tanks. Their role is to tank. And in ESO, the role of the tank is an active, reactive play style. You have time, when you have time to act, you act. When you have to react, you react. That's how they play. You taunt when you can, you low slash when you can, you do this when you can do that when you can. But it's an active, reactive playstyle. It's the same thing with the healer. Healers don't have rotations, they have an active, reactive gameplay. But tanks and healers don't do damage in the same way either. They don't run rotations. They don't run the same kind of playstyle as a DPS. Now, a lot of people don't understand how tank damage works. See, tanks are resource hogs. They burn through resources just like DPS do, but in a different manner. They burn through resources in a different way. They don't do it from activating skills. They burn through little stamina or magicka, depending on the skills they're using, and then they burn through the rest of those resources because of things like blocking, dodging, things to help mitigate damage. That's where they burn through a lot of their resources, is mitigating damage and applying effect. The rest of the time, they don't need those resources. They need to recover those resources. And this is where the synergy system plays really good and really bad, because right now it's really buggy. But it works really good when it's working. And it can work really, really good for tanks. It can work really good for DPS. But a lot of times you almost have to be self-reliant. And that's where tanks' damage comes into play. In order for a tank to be self-reliant with those resources, he has to do the same thing everyone else does. Light and heavy attack. But that's where a majority of tanking damage comes from. It's not from using abilities. It's from doing light and heavy attacks. The same thing with a healer. A lot of their damage comes from light and heavy attacks because most of their abilities are heals and debuffs and group buffs. The same thing with a tank. A tank's abilities are a lot of negative effects or CCs or things like that on the enemies, but they can still do damage. Their damage isn't absurd like a DPS. When I tell you guys, oh, check this out, I can do 20k in a single hit, yeah, that's really good for a tank. It's insane for a tank. Because most tanks in the game do anywhere between 2 to 5k right now. With the meta. That's not a whole lot. Especially when you think about per hit. Light attacks, 2k light attacks, yeah, that's really cool, man. 3 to 4k heavy attacks, right on. You know, low slash for 5k maybe if you get enough penetration in there. But my point is that when you have the right build and the right makeup of your group, a lot of things become more viable and more optimal because of it. See, optimization of your build is just as important as having your group organized to work together. And using the right builds with the right group organization works good. Because, see, this is the thing that a lot of people, I think, are more afraid of. Is that if somebody does find the meta for a lot of these builds, these builds and these group organizations with these builds are going to supersede what we have for the meta now. And I don't think they want the meta to change because it is. I'm not going to lie, the meta tank is very simplistic. It's the most easiest tank I've ever played in my life. And because it is so easy, it's so boring to me. See, I like complicated. I like challenge. And that's not a complicated, challenging, tanking way. That's so easy. I literally feel like my cat could do it. And that's pretty scary considering she has paws. But that's what it feels like. I'm not saying that's how bad it is. I'm just saying that's what it feels like, okay? It's my opinion. That's how it feels to me as a player. I always love a challenge. And two-handed tanking to me in this game is challenging. It's fun. It's exciting. Because it's so much more of a challenge than using sword and board. But unfortunately, I can't get it to work with my Templar in every group I play with. Because I play a lot of pugging. And not a lot of people understand two-handed tanking. Two-handed tanking, it doesn't work the same as sword and board. It's completely different dynamic. Just like ice staff tanking is a completely different dynamic. Yes, it shares some similarities in its design, the ice staff to sword and board, like the blocking, reduced costs, all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't work the same. It doesn't work in the same dynamic as sword and board. It doesn't have the same mechanics as sword and board. It's completely different. And unless you can play that way, it can be either really fun or really challenging. And to a lot of people, I don't think it's that they don't like it or that they think it sucks. I think what it is it's too challenging. Oh God, man, my heavy attack takes me 2 seconds to get off and to taunt something. Well, that's part of the challenge of ice staff tanking. And that's what's so fun about it. If you've never done it and never truly experienced it, you wouldn't know how good it really works. It's a great system. It's just that it doesn't work like sword and board. Just like fire staff tanking doesn't work like sword and board. Or any other thing. Doesn't even work like ice staff. It's a different dynamic, different mechanic. And it plays with a different play style. This is why we haven't found a meta for all this stuff yet. Is nobody's made it. But there is so much build variety in this game, guys, it's not even funny. In fact, it's almost frightening when you think that this game has over 300 gear sets that are available to you. Some are a little bit harder to get than others, but once you get them, the reward that you get for having them is amazing. Because some things can improve your overall character by a lot. A whole lot. And that's what I love about this game, is there's so much variety, there's so much dynamic to it, that you can go from this, you go from this, like, meh build to this, holy crap, this is awesome build. And that's what's so great about it, is you can do that. Like, from the beginning of the game, a lot of people feel like that you feel inferior. Even though you're taking on all these guys, you're doing good, you feel inferior until you get to where you're at, like, CP 160, and you start feeling that power grow, and then you get to freaking 300, you're like, yeah, and then you get to max CP, and you're like, oh, bring it on. I'm ready to take on these trials. Or I'm ready to take on these guys, and like 10 guys in PvP. And it's because not only have you built your character up to that power level, but you as a player have grown in skill and knowledge of the game's dynamics and mechanics. And that's another thing a lot of people take for granted, is a player has to learn to become better. They can't become better right out the door. You have to practice. You have to learn the game and its mechanics. And for some people, learning the mechanics is like being a neurosurgeon, okay? If you're not skilled at being a neurosurgeon, yeah, it's going to be harder for you to learn. And this guy's in trouble, so don't worry, buddy, they're running away. But yeah, that's what I'm getting at. See, there's a lot of viable builds, because a lot of builds are viable, but they're viable for different situations. Some are viable to get you into dungeons. Some are viable to get you into trials. Some are viable from the time you put it together till you do trials. But along the way, you might have to get a monster set. You know, when I hear people say, oh, well, you don't have a Maelstrom bow, you can't do trials, I kind of laugh, because I'm like, I'm already doing trials without a Maelstrom bow on my stamina DPS. I've been doing it this way for a while now. I just can't beat Maelstrom Arena. I haven't found a build that's good enough for me to beat Maelstrom Arena with. I've tried all of them, and none of them work for me the way they work for the people who make them. Because that's the thing. Everyone's playstyle is different. And you can pick up a build sometimes and jump right into it and play it like a god. But then there's other ones that you get and you start playing, and it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel comfortable. And it feels like you're climbing out of your skin, because it's that uncomfortable. That's the things that a lot of us feel when we play the meta. We feel uncomfortable playing it because it doesn't play by our standards or our play style. See, when I tell people and I do tell people of this all the time, there's a lot of builds that are really good for some people. And for other people, they're not good. And there's things in that build that are good and work really good, but for some reason people can't play it, and it's not just because the rotation can be complicated to them because they haven't practiced it to learn it or anything like that. It's because of the way the mechanics of that build work, it just doesn't feel comfortable. And that's what a lot of people misunderstand when a lot of us say, well, that doesn't work for me. Well, it works for me and it's great. It's the best build out there. Okay, well, it works for you. It doesn't work for me. And that's what a lot of us are getting at when we say we're looking for something better. We're looking for something different. We're looking for something unique. Because everyone is different. Everyone has their own preferences. Everyone has their own choices. Or their own likes and dislikes. And that's where the same thing comes in with what I was saying about races. Like, there is no optimal version for, like, a Khajiit healer, Nightblade healer. Nobody's made it. And once somebody makes it, trust me, people will play it because a lot of people like the Khajiit race. Did you guys know there's a whole guild dedicated to Khajiits? And it's not just RP they do. They do everything, including Dungeons and Trials, with whole entire Khajiit guild, like the whole entire Khajiit group. Now, they might be playing the meta right now, but that's because they can't find anything better. Because nobody's made it. Because nobody's taken the time to learn every aspect of every class. See, making a DK tank is child's play. Because the DK is literally designed around tanking. The class itself is designed with tanking in mind. It's designed with heavy armor use in mind. Look at the Sork. The Sork is designed for being one of the best AoE DPS classes in the game. And it doesn't matter, both Stamina and Magicka, they are powerhouses of AoE DPS. Single target DPS, Nightblades, the best. Templars, the best healers. Wardens are kind of all over the place. They're good, but they're not great. They're good tanks, but they're not the best tanks. They're good healers, but not the best healers. They're good DPS, but not the best DPS. They're good at everything, but not the best at anything. And it's not because they're a jack-of-all-trade class. They're a class that allows the player to diversify through the choices that they make, what they want to play and how they want to play it. It's not that they suck. It's just that they're different. And nobody's found the correct options for them yet. Because nobody's taking the time to learn that each class is different and unique into itself. And you have to build around those things. You have to build around those factors of the class. And if you want to make that class into something other than what it's specialized as, you have to build it into, you have to mold it into that role. And you have to find what works best for them. And that's where a lot of people are well, it's not that they misunderstand. They don't get it. They don't get why people want to play that way. They don't get why anyone would want to play a Templar tank when the DK is better. It's because of the option. Some people like to play like the Paladin class, and they're hoping the Templar can be that way. But nobody's made it. And I'm going to keep repeating that. Nobody's made that meta. Deltia tried, and I think he was on the right track, but I think what the problem was he was trying to copy too much of the DK idea. Instead of looking at the class and saying, okay, what would be the best, let me try and see if I can find the best combination of gear and stuff to put together to make this work 100%. And I think what it was he kept trying to make it too much like the DK and kept trying too hard to make it too much like the DK that he lost interest in it. Because he could never make it like the DK. Deltia loves the Templar class. And I think if he sat down and looked at it from a different perspective, he could come up with something a lot better. But you got to remember, everything we see online, everything we know is meta-related. Because that's where all the information comes from, is meta-related stuff. You can't take something that's meta, an idea that's meta, okay, that's made around one class and expect it to work with every class in the game. It doesn't work that way. And that's where we're having a lot of problems and a lot of issues amongst us builders, is because a lot of us are trying a lot of new ideas and getting closer and closer to making things work in such a way that nobody thought of it. Am I getting close to the two-handed tank? I hope so, but I'm finally figuring out that it only works, or works best, if your group is organized for it. And I'm not kidding. It has to be organized with the two-handed tank in mind in order for it to truly work. And there's only certain ways it works. Like if you're playing a DK, you can get away with a little bit more. If you're playing a Warden, you can get away with a little bit more. If you're playing a Nightblade, you can get away with a little bit more. But if you're playing a Templar, you can't get away with certain things that you need in a group dynamic. And that relies on somebody else utilizing that ability or bringing that ability to the floor. And that's where group dynamic comes in. And without that kind of group dynamic and organization, it'll never work. That's why nobody sees how two-handed tanking really works. I know how it works. I've played it. I've mastered it. The only thing is that I haven't found the right combination of the skills, the class, the race, all that kind of stuff that makes it to make it work the best. But someday, maybe soon, I'll figure it out. It takes time, though. There's a lot of testing that's involved in this. It took me a year to figure out how to make two-handed tanking just work, and just to work with a Templar. I mean, that's crazy. 1 year? And now that I've got it down to an art form, that I have the two-handed tanking style, like literally down to an art form, now I gotta construct it to make it work the best. Then I have to find the right gear to make it work even better. And I'm having trouble with that a little bit. And getting the right stat values, because two-handed tanking doesn't work the same as sword and board. So I have to find the right stats, like the right stat calculations. And once I get that formula or the puzzle put together, now I got to get the formula down, and that's it. And that's where I'm at right now. It's not that I'm not trying. I'm trying really hard. It's just that the class I chose isn't the best option. DK is not the best option. Nightblade is a better option, but Warden's the best. Actually, Warden and Nightblade are kind of tied with two-handed tanking, but Nightblade works a little bit better with dual-wield tanking than any other class. But that's because of the class's design. See, each class's design allows for different types of play styles. And some classes are better at certain things than others because of the design of the class. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm finding that right balance of things to make the proper builds. I've got an idea for a Templar. Meridia's Guardian is going through a massive overhaul. You guys don't even understand it. Massive overhaul, and possibly even a whole entire gear set overhaul. It just depends on how things pan out. I'm going to get on PTS next week, and I'm going to test a lot of different variations. And I'm going to bring you guys what I find to be the most viable option for Meridia's Guardian, so you guys know what that is. And it might be surprising to you guys. It might really surprise you guys, because I already know what race is the best for it. And I already know what skills are the best setups. I know, and I know when I show it to you guys are going to be really confused. But you can't make it any better. I've tried. And I've tried to set it up to give you the most utility, the most options, the most viability, all that kind of things to make it the best Templar tank I possibly can. But remember, Templars are different from all other classes, so I have to build it in a certain way. And I hope that when I do bring it out, you guys like it. So, that's pretty much it, though. I want you guys to understand, I don't hate the meta. I just don't agree with its options. And I don't hate the Trinity. I just want the Trinity to work better. I wish there was a way to get more people to play tanks. And I think if we can find more options for tanking, I think a lot more people will play them. Especially if they know, oh wow, this is a battle mage tank. They might make it. They might play it, because that's something they like. But we have to get this stuff made first. And it's not easy. Some people make it look easy, but it's not easy. It's very complicated. There's a lot of things that are involved in it. And everyone makes mistakes during their creation of their builds. And that's why a lot of builds go through iteral changes and go through these changes, because eventually what happens is we find the right makeup. And we get that build panned out to be the best we can. And that's how a meta starts. Now, I'm not looking to make a meta, make my own meta. I'm looking to expand the existing meta with more options, more viability, or more variety. And I think that's what a lot of people are expecting, is we're trying to create our meta. We're not. So, just letting you know. So that's pretty much it, though, guys. I do want to thank you all for watching. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, hit that subscribe button. Other than that, thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy will see you in game. Bye.